Hey, you're hanging out in the Link Up Lounge. I'm Tiffany Mason.
And I'm Donna Ruppel. Around here, we believe success isn't just about what you know, it's about who you link up with. This is your lounge for turning one link into endless opportunities.
Donna, it blows my mind that the two of us have over 30 years of combined networking experience.
I know. We've built businesses, expanded networks, and created unstoppable momentum, all through the power of strategic connections.
AKA networking. And now we're here to guide you to do the same, starting today.
So let's dive in, connect, and start making moves you didn't even know were possible.
Welcome back to the Link Up Lounge. I'm Tiffany Mason of Virtually You, the boutique podcast management agency, and I'm here with my co-host, Donna Ruppel, your Nocatee real estate expert.
This is your lounge for turning one link into endless opportunities. And today, we're calling out the biggest networking mistakes professionals are still making, even in 2026. These are the kinds of mistakes that can seem small in the moment, but have a really big impact over time. Because sometimes it's not what you're doing, it's what you're doing wrong that may be holding you back. And the good news is, once you recognize those patterns, they're absolutely fixable.
Yeah, what's coming to mind for me is when people explain what they do for their business and they're like all over the place. And then we were like, hey, just get this power statement down. Because a lot of people feel like networking just isn't working for them. They are showing up, they're having these conversations, they're exchanging information, but nothing's really coming from it. And that can be so frustrating, especially when you feel like you're putting in time and energy. And really, networking should be reciprocal. And so it feels like you're spinning your wheels. If you're putting in all this time and effort and then you're not getting anything really in return, like where's the ROI? It starts to make people wonder whether networking is even worth it, when really the issue is often the approach. It's not the system, it's the operator. Operator error.
Operator error. Yes, absolutely. And most of the time, it's not, like you said, lack of effort. It's a few key mistakes that are like quietly breaking the connection before it ever really has a chance to grow. And these mistakes are totally common. And many professionals
Many.
make them without even noticing. The problem is even small missteps can create distance in that conversation and connection instead of trust.
Well, and we tend to network or tend to refer people that we know, like, and trust, right? So if we're not building that trust, if we're building distance, then obviously we're not going to be getting the referrals. So This episode is all about awareness and adjustment. Pivot was our word for 2020, and maybe we need to revisit that word because once you see it, you can fix it, and everything else changes. Networking starts to feel less awkward, less forced, and much more effective. Sometimes the smallest shift in how you connect can create the biggest difference in the results that you see.
One of the biggest mistakes, leading every conversation back to you. It can happen so easily, especially when you're trying to explain what you do and make a strong impression. You're probably nervous. But when every answer becomes a pitch or every conversation circles back to your business, the connection starts to feel really one-sided. People can definitely sense when the focus is more on being noticed than actually building a connection or making a relationship or getting to know them.
Yeah. And again, what I'm thinking of or what comes to mind is like the person who is you're trying to tell them like what you do, what your business is, but as you start to lose them, as they are like starting to look around the room or whatever, you like start saying more about yourself to be like more impressive, like, but I can also do this. I can do that. Don't fall into that trap because networking is not a monologue. It's a dialogue. If you are just listing off what you do without learning about that other person, you're missing the connection. Real networking happens when there's curiosity, exchange, and genuine interest on both sides. People remember how you made them feel, and feeling talked at is very different than feeling understood. I know that if I'm having a conversation with somebody and they don't ask me anything about my business, I'm like, you're a taker. Okay, noted. Yeah, and also hashtag or quote next, right? Like moving right along. So it's through that curiosity that you end up finding out things that you guys can connect on or ways that you can support them. If all you ever do is say, hey, Donna, I edit podcasts and I do this and I do that and I do this, we both walk away from each other being like, well, one person feels talked at you and me, I'm like, I have no idea how I could help them or what I could do with their
Right?
business or how a
Right?
podcast would even help them.
I know, I know. It's one of those things where it's like, even in a social setting, you notice the people who just talk about themselves the whole time and never ask you
Mhm.
one question.
Yeah.
I always walk away from those exchanges and go, well, that person finds themselves really interesting. Um, like you didn't ask me one thing. People definitely want to feel seen and heard.
Yeah.
And when you ask thoughtful questions and then actually listen to their answer, I mean, that's honestly what makes you memorable. It shows confidence, emotional intelligence, and a real interest in the person in front of you. And often those kinds of conversations are the ones that naturally open the door to a deeper connection. Now they see that you're actually interested in them and that you're really trying to develop a relationship with them. And that makes a lot of people more interested in you and more interested
Mhm.
in figuring out how they can help you or how you guys can collaborate together, or so many other things come from that.
I always tell my kids, if you're going to ask a question, listen for the answer.
Mm.
So, too often, I think what ends up happening is we get so wrapped up in how we're going to respond. I know when I am interacting with somebody and they're telling me about their business, in my head, I think this comes from podcasting, but I start to panic like, what is my follow up question? What is my follow up question? Because I want to ask them something more about their business. I want to have this amazing question that they go, good question. And then they go on to whatever their answer is. So I think there's also a fine balance between asking good follow-up questions and then actually listening to what they say. I think sometimes, the last episode with Jennifer Falconberry, we were talking about remembering people's names.
Oh,
And
yeah.
often I think when somebody introduces themselves and says their name, if you don't remember their name, you're likely figuring out what you're going to say next. And sometimes that prevents us from listening to what that person actually said to us. So, sorry, super side note, tangent. Last night, my daughter had a flag football game, and I met one of the parents, and the gentleman told me his name, and then he told me his daughter's name, and immediately I did not know. I did not know their names. And so I did ask again, and then I kept saying, after he and I were done with our exchange, I said his name, her name, and her number. His name, her name, and her number. His name, her name, and her number. Because I was like, I'll be damned if I'm going to brag on the podcast that I know people's names and then I can't even fulfill that.
Right?
So, anyway,
That's
sorry,
why I
that was
don't
a
brag
side note.
about that, because I definitely don't do well at that. Name tags
Yeah,
are a
yeah,
godsend.
yeah.
Everybody
Well,
should
I
walk around
still
all the time with a name tag. I think we should just do that everywhere.
And along with knowing their name or, being involved in the conversation, I have to say, me personally, there's nothing worse than when I have had an exchange with somebody and somebody keeps asking me questions about podcasting or, how do I manage podcasts or how do I edit, and I'm happy to give them the information. But at some point, I got to shut them down and be like, hey, whoa, time out. Tell me something about you,
Yeah.
and I think when we had our speed networking event, it was very obvious to me who likes to talk about themselves because there were about 3 groups that constantly I was like, okay, switch speakers, switch who's talking. And then the person would be like, I only got 30 seconds. And I'd be like, that's because the other person likes to talk about themselves. So I think it's imperative that we remember, it's reciprocal and to ask the other person kind of their point of view. And ironically, that's what makes people want to know you more. They want to know more about you when you're interested in them. When
Right.
someone feels comfortable, valued, and genuinely listened to, they're much more likely to ask you about your work and stay engaged in the conversation. It takes the pressure off and makes the interaction feel so much more natural. That kind of connection is far more powerful than trying to impress someone in the first 30 seconds. And I'll tell you another big one is lack of follow up. I met this gentleman and we were talking about how I could maybe use his services and he could help me edit some content, some of the social media stuff, which I do, but I don't love it. And if I can farm that out, I would prefer to. And so we had connected at the first meeting and then said we were going to, connect and then nobody followed up and that's fine. Saw him a second time though. And he said, okay, let's connect. And I was like, well, clearly he's not going to, but maybe he thought the same thing about me. Let's be fair. But I
Yeah.
had him scan my digital business card and I said, would you do me a favor and scan this? And I think we talked about that too. The second or third interaction that feels a little bit more natural to ask someone to scan that. Okay. So that he scanned it, gave me his information. got home, popped up the email, and I was like, oh, that's right. I want to connect with him. So I reached out to him and we had been talking. I think I even mentioned this in a previous episode. We had been talking about a link to a device that I was looking for. And so I replied, oh, so great to meet you. Would love to connect. And then also, if you get a chance, can you send me that Amazon link? Do you know he replied with the opportunity to connect, but he didn't give me that link to the device that I was looking for? And that just was a big, fat, waving red flag as big as you could get it. Like, this person does not care about following through on even the small things, like sharing that stupid little link. He bragged about it, how great it was, how much power it gave out, all these things. And I was like, okay, perfect. I'm not even going to look. Like, just send me the link. And then he didn't send me the link. And I was like, so you only care about, okay, cool. So yeah, that's a relationship I may not pursue. Sorry, not sorry.
Yeah, I mean, so many times you have great conversations with people at a networking event or not even at a networking event, just, around in life. And maybe you exchange contact information and then you have a plan to follow up, but then the moment just sort of ends there. And the connection felt good in the room or on the sidewalk or in the store, but without follow up, it usually fades very quickly. I mean, super
Dead on
quickly.
arrival, man.
Yeah, like by the time you get home, like it's gone,
Your
right?
car's in park and the relationship has ended.
Yeah, for sure. So a strong first conversation means very little if there's nothing to keep the relationship moving forward. And that's where the real heavy lifting becomes. That's where you really have to have a system in place, intention behind you, and you have to actually do the follow-up because you can have an award-winning conversation where you listened and you leaned in and you got to know each other and all the right feels and you did everything right. But then if there's no follow-up, it's all for nothing. Literally, nothing.
Well, and honestly, I feel very flattered when somebody follows up with me. Like, oh, that's great. First of all, I didn't have to do the first thing. And second of all, you thought enough of our conversation to follow up. So
Right.
I love that. Because following up does not have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be like this big to-do list, It can be seriously, I went on Facebook Messenger today. I connected 4 people in a matter of 3 seconds. I mean, it was like, grab the name. Hey, I'm connecting you too for this reason. I hope you get a chance to connect. Done. Right? Like that was the connection they were looking for. That was the follow-up that I had promised to that person. And I love when you do it on a social media platform because then it kind of, you'd be foolish if you didn't friend them, right? I mean, I feel like that's kind of a step 1, ask to be a friend. Step 2, send the referral or the connection or whatever information you said you were going to send them.
Right.
It doesn't have to be complicated. It has to be consistent. So like you said, have a system in place, something that you're going to be doing all the time where you can kind of hold yourself accountable. It can be as simple as a quick message, like I mentioned, that would mention something that you talked about, or just thanking them for the conversation. I did get an email, a full-blown email from someone who was like, Tiffany, it was so nice meeting you at the event today. And that was pretty much, there was like 2 sentences. And I thought, okay, well, communication has been established. And if we need each other, we have each other's email. So it's just small actions that show intention, and intention is what helps to grow relationships.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, connecting somebody on social media, like in a 3-way conversation, I really like that on the end of when somebody connects me with somebody that way, because not only do I get to friend them on social media, like you mentioned, but also I get to check out their profile. I get to learn a little bit about them. Do they have a family? What do they say about themselves? What does their social media look like? What's their jam? Like, what do they hold dear? I like looking at the person's social media to see, are they praising their kid who just graduated from high school, or are they taking beach pics of their little 3-year-old? It gives me a glimpse into who they are.
Or is it only pictures of them?
Right? Or only
you can tell
posts
a lot
about their business.
Or only motivational memes. We should do a podcast about social media personalities.
Right? So I love that you can kind of get a little glimpse of this person that you've been put in contact with before your conversation with them. So you can kind of get a little background on them and get a clue as far as where they're coming from. So I love that part. we all know that life gets busy, right?
Mhm.
Distractions take over. I mean, that is the theme of my life right now. Distractions take over. And suddenly,
You may see that as a meme on her Facebook social soon, folks.
right? Yeah. And suddenly that, promising connection you had from that encounter or that networking event is gone. You walked into your real life full of distractions and I feel like balls are just constantly being thrown at me and I'm trying to catch them in various places. And I have completely lost the power of what just happened, right? So the truth is relationships are built in the follow-up, not in the introduction. And so one thing that I used to have to do way back when I was super busy and my kids were really little and I was running and gunning is that I made a promise to myself that I would not get out of the car at my house until I did my follow-up messages. Because
Oh.
once I walked in that door,
Yeah.
like nothing is happening again, right? Because
Mhm.
now everybody else needs something else. And then it's gone from my brain. So that used to be my policy that I wouldn't get out of my car. I might sit in the driveway for 30 minutes while I did my follow up, but I wouldn't get out of the car until I did all my follow up. So sometimes when I feel like I'm dropping the ball on follow up, I go back to that and I tell myself I'm not going to get out of the car until I do my follow up messages.
So smart. Right. A simple message, a quick check in, or even sharing something relevant can keep that relationship moving forward. It shows that you were paying attention and that connection mattered more than beyond the event itself. I love if I get like a meme or something from somebody or a
Right.
link or something about something we were talking about. And I kind of, okay, that's kind of fun that they did that.
Right.
Just that kind of follow through is what separates forgettable networking from meaningful relationship building. It doesn't need to be perfect. It just actually needs to happen, guys.
Right. We talked about this on a previous episode a long time ago, but I mentioned to somebody in passing that I liked Highland cows. And then after that event, she sent me a meme of Highland cows. And to me, it was
Yes.
like, oh my God, she listened. She
Mhm.
heard that random thing I said, and then she
Mhm.
followed up with that message. And that to me was better than her being like, it was so great to meet you. And I look forward to connecting later, like whatever. I was like, oh, this is good. I like this. But I am not generally a super formal person. Some people are very formal and they want everything formal, and that's fine. You have to do you. You have to be your personality.
Yeah.
My brother-in-law is very formal. And so
Mm.
sometimes when he tells me, "Oh, well, you should say this or whatever," and I think about it and I'm like, I'll say a version of that. It's not going to be that formal. And
Why?
he
Because you
knows
don't
that.
wanna come off salesy?
Yes, absolutely. Let's talk about this one. Going straight into selling. It's one of the fastest ways to make a conversation feel uncomfortable or forced or like I want to get out of this right now. That's how I feel when someone feels like they're being evaluated as a potential sale instead of valued as a person or a relationship you're trying to build. The trust disappears immediately. Networking
Mhm.
should never feel like a race to close something. You shouldn't even be selling when you're at a networking event. That is, I think,
No.
one of the biggest mistakes people make. And typically the people who don't like networking or think it's like useless or a waste of time are the people who go into networking events selling and trying to close a deal. You're not going to close a deal at a networking event. And if you're trying, you're not even going to make a relationship. Nobody's going to like you.
Well, you get the email back from them or you get a message from them or something, and you're like, "I don't wanna open it. I don't wanna see
Right?
what it is."
Right? Or like you meet somebody, you're kind of borderline. Were they selling me? Were they just
Yeah.
telling me about their business? I'm not really sure. And then you get the follow up message and it's 100% selling. And you're like,
Bad.
nope, I knew there was a little sniff of that. I could smell it at the time. Yeah. No, that's not the kind of follow up we're talking about.
Well, and I don't know about you, Donna, but I'm not referring that person to anybody.
No.
Because if
Uh-uh.
I felt overwhelmed and sold to, I'm not putting anybody that I know. I mean, that's the whole point of networking. You're supposed to make the relationship, make the connection, and then you're supposed to be using each other's networks. That's the whole point. It's
Oh,
not to sell to I guess maybe think about going into the room. You're trying to connect with this one person who knows 50 people that they could introduce you to, opposed to getting one sale from that one person, right?
right.
Like that is not the goal of networking. So if your first instinct is to pitch, people will pull back. Most people can tell right away when the conversation has an agenda, and that makes people less likely to open up. Real connections require space, patience, and willingness to build the relationship before expecting a result. And I think in the same breath as expecting a result, I think you've said it on the podcast too. That should be the name of this episode. You've said that on the podcast too. But you said you go into networking and you know you're not going to like you're not going to sell someone a house
Right.
in
Right.
that meeting, right?
It's not going to happen.
It's a long game for you.
Right.
And it's more than a meeting for, let's say, 100% of people.
Right. 100%. Because
100%.
100%, because even if you are, I think the biggest industry that gets kind of nixed the most on this is your direct sales people, right?
Sure.
Especially when the ticket item is lower and anybody can buy it, right? So those are the people typically, and I hate to throw them under the bus because I was one for a very long time, but that is the biggest mistake I saw when I was in that industry, is that they're trying to close a sale with every person they meet. And what they're missing out on is, instead of me trying to pitch a sale to Tiffany, what I want to do is I want to earn Tiffany's trust. I want Tiffany to love me. I want Tiffany to trust me. I want her to get to know me. And then Tiffany she's going to refer
come
me
to you, and I'm going to say, can we host a party for the cheerleaders? And you can get a whole bunch of sales.
Right.
That actually happened, you guys.
Right. Right. Yes, absolutely. And also then you're going to feel more confident and comfortable referring your friends to me or whatever. And so your circle of influence, everybody supposedly has a circle of influence of about 150 people. So if your circle of influence of 150 people is more valuable to me than the one sale I might make out of stress and pressuring you, then just getting to know you and letting you get to know me. I mean, trust needs to get built first. Networking is about relationships first, and the opportunities come after. When you focus too soon on what you can get, your ROI, you miss the chance to create something much more valuable. The strongest,
valuable.
Valuable.
Yeah, that's the word right there. That's the operative word.
Yeah. The strongest business relationships usually start with authenticity and a relationship, not a sales pitch.
Yep. Focus on connection, not conversion. The long-term results will always outweigh the quick pitch. When people trust you and feel comfortable with you, opportunities happen much more naturally. And those opportunities are usually stronger, more aligned, and more sustainable over time.
Okay, one last thing that I want to mention in this topic is that another mistake is spreading yourself too thin. I do see this when people get really excited about networking and they're trying to attend every single event. They're trying to join every group. They're trying to connect with everyone. It might seem like more visibility will automatically lead to better results, but that's not always true. When you're constantly moving from one room to the next, it becomes really hard to build relationships and to build consistency and to do that follow-up we talked about well. And without consistency and follow-up, relationships stay super shallow.
Well, I think it's like that perception of activity, right? Like where we were talking about that with like handing out business cards and being in the biggest room. That's just a perception of productivity. That's a perception that you're out there and you're really being visible. But guess what? Where's the momentum? So think about everything you've done and what do you have to show for it? You know, that might be an indicator. Maybe you're doing too much if you're not. You're spreading yourself too thin. You're attending all these events. You're not doing the follow-up. You're not making the actual connections. Nothing's genuine. There's no trust. And there haven't been any referrals. These are some red flags that you would be looking for. You could be spreading yourself a little bit too thin. And it can lead to burnout and shallow relationships. You can't build depth if you're constantly starting over. At some point, too much networking becomes performative instead of productive. And everywhere may look mic drop. Being everywhere may look impressive from the outside, but it often leaves you exhausted and disconnected.
Yes, it's better to be consistent in a few spaces than invisible in many, right? When you show up regularly in the right rooms, people start to notice you, trust you, and understand what you bring to the table. And that repeated presence matters so much more than occasional appearances in a dozen different places. Depth always creates more value than scattered visibility. And that is the whole reason why for our networking organization, Bond and Beyond, we meet weekly and we talk about this because that's the format that Tiffany and I decided we wanted because what we cared about was the relationship building, the connection, the trust, more than having 100 people in a room once a month or once a year or whatever. It's just you're going to build so much deeper connections, which lead to way better opportunity.
Well, and I am a big fan of action brings clarity. So, in the beginning, it's not harmful to attend multiple events, get a taste of what you like, but then settle in. Then, after that, we stop going to all the events and we go to the ones that really speak to us because that's where
Mhm.
real relationships, real opportunities are built. The right spaces allow you to move beyond introductions and into actual trust, collaborations, which are my favorite, and support. You do not need a massive network to be successful. You need a strong and intentional one.
If you've made any of these mistakes, you are not alone. Most professionals have at some point. Networking is something we all are learning and refining as we go. The important thing is not to judge yourself for it, but to recognize where you can improve and choose a better approach moving forward.
So just remember, when you slow down, focus on people, and follow through, everything starts to feel more natural and more effective. You stop forcing conversations and start building real trust. That shift creates better experiences and better outcomes. And over time, it makes networking feel like something meaningful instead of something you have to survive. And that's probably with you and I, Donna, having a focus on these relationships, like that's where it's at for us. That's probably why we like networking so much to the point where we started a podcast about it.
So it's time for our networking mode on tip. After your next networking conversation, send a follow-up within 24 hours or before you get out of the car. Reference something specific you talked about so it feels personal and not generic. Networking mode on.
If this episode helped you spot a shift you need to make, tag us on Instagram at _linkup lounge. We'd love to hear what you're working on. Let's keep building those powerful links together.
You've been hanging out in the Link Up Lounge, your lounge for turning one link into endless opportunities.
Now it's your turn. Go make a powerful link today.
Networking mode on.